Hello, I'm Rachel Gilmore, your least favorite person's least favorite journalist. Welcome to Bubble Pop. This is the weekly show where we talk about some of the biggest headlines and juiciest news tidbits so you don't have to doom scroll. We got to kick that habit, folks. It's just melting our brains. And for season 2, as you know by now, we are doing it live. So just a reminder that if you want to support the show, you can subscribe on Patreon, Substack, and YouTube, as well as anywhere you like to listen. And today, I have got a very special show for you. In 1 week, the NDP leadership candidates will face off in the first debate for the race to replace former NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. But who is actually running? And what the heck do they stand for? Well, today, you're going to get to hear from 2 of the candidates. I'm calling them the Underdogs, which I hope they don't take offense to because it's a compliment. Because the thing is, while they might not have had the same profile as some of their competitors going into this, it's so important to get to know the Underdogs because next thing you know, they end up coming out on top. So first up, you will be hearing from Tanille Johnston. She's a social worker, a city councillor, a mother, and a former city councillor who almost won a federal NDP seat in the last election. Unfortunately, strategic voting split the vote on the traditionally NDP seat, and guess who snuck in? None other than residential school denier Aaron Gunn. So we're going to have a lot to chat about. Speaking of strategic voting, though, electoral reform is a key aspect of this other leadership candidate's push. Tony McQuail is a farmer, educator, and advocate for a more sustainable Canada. But more on him at 12:30. And just a reminder, I'm going to be trying to leave about 10 minutes at the end of each of these interviews to take some audience questions. I will prioritize those who use the super chat function, but please ask away anyway, because we usually have time to take some of both. And then after that, we're going to do a little lightning round with both of the candidates together. So with that, let's bring up our first NDP leadership candidate. I am so excited. We've got Tanille Johnston. Her key priorities touch on housing, healthcare, the environment, free and accessible post-secondary education, increasing childcare spaces, electoral reform, public transit, and increasing the representation and participation of Indigenous people. She's doing everything she can to personally contribute to that last pillar, as she's the first Indigenous woman in NDP history to run for the federal party's top job. That injects some much needed diversity into an otherwise pasty as hell race. So, Tanille, welcome to Bubble Pop.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you doing?
Good, just your average crazy Thursday morning here in Lake Cousteau territory in Campbell River, where I'm born and raised and proud to be from.
Yeah, I can imagine. I feel like, you just describing all of the hats that you wear, I'm like, this is just a busy woman. So thank you for making some time for this. I did want to start off by asking you one thing that's really struck me about the leadership candidates, and it's not really a surprise when you think about it because you're all running for the leadership of the same party, is that there is a lot of overlap in the positions and what a lot of you guys stand for. So I wanted to, right off the bat, give you an opportunity to kind of give me and the audience your elevator pitch. What is it that sets you apart from the other candidates?
I think there's some physical stuff for sure. Like I'm about a decade younger than the next youngest person in the race, so I'm a different generation in its entirety. Social work is my game. That's my education. That's my passion. That's the lens that I bring to everything. As you've already offered, I'm an Indigenous woman, so that comes with its own worldview and lens that is unique to everyone else in the race. And I come with that ability to have very challenging conversations and work across excessive difference. As a social worker, you enter into conversations that the person in the room already doesn't like you. It's already extremely heated. And you have to leave that room with some sort of agreement in place on how you're going to work better together moving forward. And I believe that that is the work of politics. You are working with folks that arguably are going to disagree with you 99% of the time. But for the betterment of the country, you have to come towards some sort of alignment and agreement to make decisions that are going to be good for all Canadians. So I feel like that skill set sets me apart from a lot of the other folks in the race, along with just, my lived experience. Definitely.
Was there a moment in that lived experience that made you decide that you wanted to be someone who, uh, you know, wasn't just an advocate, but led that advocacy?
I think we look for those moments that are telling us what to do. A couple for me. So when I was super young, this is elementary school years, two things happened. One, I was hearing a group of friends talk about people that they didn't know were my cousins in a pretty racist way. And these are young kiddos, right? That probably didn't know the way they were talking was racist. And they didn't know that I was related to them because I lived on the opposite side of town when I was really young than the rest of my family. So I went to a different elementary school. I wasn't arguably on the native side of town. So I wasn't lumped in with that. So there was that. And then also in my grade 3-4 split class, we were talking about ferries. And we were talking about how the United States was making this plan to build a bridge from continental United States to Hawaii. And I kind of put my hand up and I was like, well, that doesn't really make any sense. Like, why don't they build us a bridge from Campbell River to Quadra? Don't tell Quadra I said this. And then they can have our ferry and they can ferry across. Because me, like, as a young person, didn't understand why they needed a bridge and they couldn't use a boat. And my teacher at the time was an exchange teacher from Australia. And she said, if you ever run for politics, like you've got my vote. And then my name from birth, we're named at 10 Moons. And that is how our community affirms that, we're here to stay in the human world. And Lakwalokwa like loosely translates to speaks loud or voice is heard. So I think there's a lot of things that have just been adding up into this place and really owning, where I have a skill set. I am not the best beater. I am not fantastic at making regalia. I'm learning my language, but it's very challenging. I don't know a lot of my family's songs, but other people do. And this is a space that I've got some talent in, I guess, to be honest. And I need to take up that space because our people need to be present in these conversations.
I'm glad that you said that you have talent in that space, because I think often as women, and I'd imagine also especially as a racialized woman, that's not something that society tells you can say. And it's good to hear you say it because, we should be proud of our accomplishments in those ways. I did want to ask you about what was very nearly it was almost another incredible accomplishment, which would have been you winning that federal seat at North Island Powell River, and just the heartbreaking loss to Aaron Gunn of all people. Like I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Aaron Gunn, he made headlines during the federal election because of his comments about residential schools, which effectively just completely diminished, downplayed, and it was horrific. Like he said, there was no genocide. Stopped lying to people and read a book. Said that Indigenous groups in Ontario asked for residential schools and called them much maligned. So it was. I think it adds another layer of pain to this. And lots of pundits seem to blame strategic voting for his win. I wanted to ask you, what did you learn from not only the campaign itself, but also the end result?
Yeah, I mean, going into that, I knew what the possibilities were, right? I knew that there was a chance that if the Liberals pulled enough votes, that all it would do is like pave that yellow brick road for Aaron. But like did not let that discourage me in any way, shape, or form because it shouldn't. Just because something's going to be hard or near impossible doesn't mean you don't do it. Um, I definitely learned the lack of understanding of our unique political geography in North Island Powell River and arguably in a number of ridings across BC. where it doesn't matter what's happening on the East Coast as far as the prime minister is concerned for an election. What matters is how your unique political geography sits, so that you are informed about the way that you vote. And I think because it was a fear-based election, everyone was terrified, and they took this anyone but Polyev approach. It freaked people out, and I think the Liberal Party championed on that really hard. And made the entire country think that they had to vote for the Liberals in order to keep Polyev from leadership, when realistically, in North Island, Powell River specifically, that is absolutely not true. The only thing that was going to happen is what did happen, is if you vote Liberal, you're essentially paving the way for a Conservative seat to be created. Liberals haven't won here in decades and decades and decades. Not even when Justin Trudeau was here with his fancy hair and his great personality. It didn't work. It didn't happen because we are blue-orange. We have been for forever and ever. And I feel like that was a really hard learning for folks in North Island, Powell River, that last election, and something that we just didn't have the educational tools out early enough, fast enough, broad enough to really solidify to folks that your vote is orange. If you want to keep out Conservatives, your vote is orange in North Island, Powell River.
It is so interesting to me that so often people think that strategic voting just means vote Liberal. Like I remember I was living in a riding that had been NDP for a long time, and in Ottawa Centre at the time, it had been NDP for a while. And I was having drinks with some friends on election night, and I was chatting with one of them, and they said, "Oh yeah, I voted strategically in Ottawa Centre, so I had to vote Liberal." And I was like, do you know how the math works?
Down.
Yeah.
We're going to go through something here, and don't be offended.
Yeah. So I really think there's like this weird misunderstanding where people think voting strategically just means people who would otherwise vote NDP voting Liberal, and they don't necessarily look at the actual facts of the history of their riding and what strategic voting would actually look like in that context. But, yeah. I did want to ask you more broadly about, obviously, the NDP suffered a pretty brutal loss in that election. And this was something I asked on my live stream on Tuesday, and a lot of folks in the chat wanted to hear from you guys. How would you make the NDP relevant again?
Yeah, I mean, we need a big change up, right? We need to, one of the biggest things for me is we need to own our faults. We need to own where we've made mistakes, where we haven't shown up. I think we relied too heavy on what we thought were pre-existing relationships, but we weren't actually honoring those relationships in a good way to realistically expect that vote to come behind us and those assurances with that. So we need to kind of start again, start fresh, accept our failures where they were, listen to what folks need from us, and then reinvest in those relationships. And they have to be broader than, the labor industry. So, NDP champions being like the working class party, the party of the people. But a lot of folks don't identify as even being a worker. Like when I hear working class, I think of like the mine that my dad worked at. I think about, the logging company that my uncle owns. Like I think about these types of industry, right? Not necessarily like our hairstylists that, they actually have unions that they belong to. So I think we need language that really represents a lot more Canadians so that we can be that inclusive party, and going to those spaces and places, like touching base with our national pride collectives across the country, visiting our libraries, one of our only public spaces left in the country, to say, hey, librarians, we see you, we got you. Like tell us what you need from us at a federal level, because we don't do much federally for our public libraries. And I think we should. Those folks are on the front lines of our housing crisis, on the front lines of our toxic drug supply crisis, and we don't support them to do that work that they never signed up for either. I mean, they're librarians. Like they don't want to be, witnessing some of the really hardest parts of lives of folks. Like they want to honor the Dewey Decimal System, and as they should.
Yeah. Get librarians back to the Dewey Decimal System, by providing adequate social supports and rectifying root causes of poverty.
Imagine a social media campaign around that.
Yeah, I feel like I need to workshop the way I worded it. Yeah, exactly.
How dare you say that?
Speaking of, policies and social programs and all that, I was looking at what you highlighted on your website here about as your key priorities. And one thing I noticed about it that is something that I hear the pundit class and like the panelists on various political analysts and analysis shows, yada yada, they always come back with the same criticism. And I heard them levy this at Jagmeet Singh a lot during the election too. And I don't necessarily fully buy it, although as someone living in Quebec, I also think that that's a very dramatic thing to say that could really piss some people off. But a lot of the stuff that you define as key priorities will get you that classic pushback of, those are provincial responsibilities, healthcare, education, housing to a degree. How do you address these key priorities of yours without pissing off the provinces by stepping on their toes, especially in Quebec?
Yeah, so I mean, that's another key area where we have a ton of nation building to do. We arguably have a giant trench between the federal NDP party and the provincial NDP parties, and we need to fix that. We need to bridge that, and we need to help, is the way I see it. We sign checks over to the provinces all the time, yet we don't really help in that space. We chuck money at a problem, but we're not necessarily moving the types of policies and legislation that we need to actually allow our provinces to really get some stuff done. And especially in healthcare. I mean, our federal health transfers, in my opinion, are not nearly enough to offer our healthcare industry, our provinces, a chance at having a really solid impact in our healthcare system. I mean, we just went through a pandemic. We are on like over a decade of toxic drug supply crisis in BC. It's these challenges are monumental. And did we rise to the occasion and like permanently adjust funding to provinces? No. We sent, a bunch of grants. We chucked money at a problem saying fix it, knowing that the repercussions of the pandemic are still alive and well. We have umpteen different flus now that everyone's getting. There's huge repercussions, and our toxic drug supply is alive and well. So none of these things have changed, yet the funding has not kept up to even give our provinces a fair shot. So I don't view it as stepping on toes, but it's also how you frame it, right? We should be going to our provinces saying, where are like your big gaps? Where are we in the way? And how do we move out of the way to help you in that? So that's how I view that work, not necessarily kind of the big hammer coming down saying, do better with less. Like, I don't think that's how we get anywhere. We really need to help. Even like yesterday's announcement, breaking down interprovincial barriers for purchasing a number of different goods across the country. Fantastic. But we missed food. We missed food. And in like when all of our conversations and the bickering that's happening in the House of Commons right now about the food costs, like maybe that should have been the number one before, being able to purchase that Hyundai from across the border, like, so we need to set our priorities so that they match with the provinces, because the provinces are doing the work. They are doing the work. They're the wheels of the vehicle.
You mean I can't eat LNG? That's wild. I thought, no way.
Which means great, so right? It's so great. It'll just coat the entire inside of your body and you'll never have to eat it again.
I hear it's really good for you, like carbon neutral or whatever, same as calorie neutral. Definitely not carbon neutral, but so Tanille, I did have one last question for you before I turn to the audience and folks in the chat. If you guys have some questions for Tanille, I'm gonna leave about 7 minutes for you guys at the end here. So feel free to drop those in the chat now. But Tanille, my last question for you is, I know you mentioned earlier, on the playground, hearing some kids say racist stuff about your cousins. And I just want you to picture that little girl that you were, and she's standing in front of you, and you just became NDP leader. And I want to ask you, what do you see in the eyes of that young Indigenous girl when she looks at you? And what would you say to her about it?
I would say, take me to them. we're going to go have a conversation and we're going to set some stuff straight. Yeah, I hope that young Indigenous people feel super empowered when us like older folks or whoever step into these positions, because arguably this race was not built or structured for someone like me. It's not built for your actual average working Canadian. It's not built for someone that's coming from a rural riding. I'm arguably a nobody from the middle of nowhere on the opposite side of the country of Ottawa. There's a lot of inequities that are in the leadership race itself, and I believe as a party we can do better in that. We can structure races where we are inclusive, where we are lifting up people from rural areas that want to put their voice forward and feel they have the skills necessary to do the work that our party needs to do, especially right now where I feel like we need a nation builder. Arguably, I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if we won the prime minister spot next election? But arguably, we have epic nation building to do before we do that. And I really feel that that's where my skill set is as a naturally inclusive, like collaborative person. So yeah, I think standing with our kiddos in that and showing them like how to have those strong conversations, because racism is not going away. We want to tackle it head on 100%. As a mother of two status Indians, I'm very conscious of what the world's going to look like for them, what it looks like right now, and where they're going to have hard conversations, because they're also white passing, so they don't look Native, and that carries its own type of discrimination that comes with it when you're not native enough, you're not brown enough, but then you're also not white enough at the same time. So there's lots of work to do, and I hope that those tiny kiddos feel that like I'm approachable and that I'm willing to help in any of those really hard conversations.
Yeah, that's great. So we did get a few questions coming in the chat. So the first one, actually, you just talked about inclusion, and obviously there is a really big problem right now in Alberta, and it's happening in other provinces too. Ninja Cupcake wants to know, what would Tanille's plan be to tackle provinces like Alberta slashing the hell out of our civil rights, like trans rights, workers' rights, access to free healthcare? I'll just leave you to it. Do you have
yeah,
what would you
I mean,
do
first,
in that?
like, shout out, it's Trans Day of Remembrance today, so shout out there, please. Hug your people, give them some love today, okay? I think Alberta is a prime example of a province we need to spend a whole lot more time in. It's one of those provinces that we've written off numerous ridings in Alberta as being unattainable. We can't go there. We're never going to win. So we'll have a paper candidate and call it a day. We have some amazing human beings. Like, I shout out Calgary. I see you. I know you're there. Like, there's so many great humans. Peace River, like, oh, you guys, like, there's so many rural ridings that are amazing in Alberta. And I think we need to be a lot present there, because to change these big things, we have to win, right? We need to win. We have to be strategic about it. And we have to earn every single vote. You can't just expect people to vote for you because maybe you said the right thing that one time. You got to show face. You got to show up and build those networks to support each other, because that's how we're going to be able to come up against these huge challenges. And healthcare is one that I we need to fund better, but we also need our Canadian Health Act and the agreements that we have in place with provinces for what's going to happen for those money to be fairly robust, right? Just sending a whole chunk of money with no kind of a responsibility attached to it outside of provide healthcare isn't enough. We need specifics so that we can create accountability in those agreements, so we have something to not only hold our provinces against, but collect data on, like, where is that stuff going well? How is it funded? Does it need more funding to actually hit the dot? We need to be doing that type of work so that we're, not totally reining in and controlling everything the provinces are doing, but making sure there's a level of accountability for your tax dollars and that they're adequately funded to do the complex and specialized work that we're asking them to do.
Yeah. So we have another question here that I think is a good one, which is, how will you encourage the strategic voters to support the NDP?
Yeah, so this comes down to education. And I would love us, and this is my whole thing too, is like every day, not just election day, showing up. all the time. We're present everywhere, all year long. Doesn't matter if it's election year or not. We need our candidates out early. We need those education pieces that shows folks what their political geography looks like in each of their ridings. Because even in the last election, talking to folks that were in different areas of the country, I urged them to talk to their EDAs, pull up their voting history, and figure out how their riding sits. Because if it is truly like anyone but Polyev, like sometimes that does mean that the Liberals are going to win in a riding that's going to keep a Conservative seat out, and that's a tough pill to swallow. That's not all NDP all day long every single time. But we have to be conscious of this stuff. This is a part of the strategy that builds better coalitions, that builds better relationships, that can get you to that a majority seat in the House of Commons. But we have to be smart of it, and we have to be out there nice and early. I know there's a lot of work happening right now within the NDP to do that research into how the last election went and bringing that forward. But we need that information to get to every single member. We need everyone to understand what happened in their riding, and we can be doing all that work right now. Arguably, we should have started as soon as possible, resourcing EDAs to be able to do that educational piece out to their membership to highlight that history within each riding, because that's the only way to do it. There's no central strategic one-liner that's going to fit across the country. It has to be EDA by EDA.
Well, Tanille, I wish there's more questions in the chat and I wish I could ask them, but I want to make sure we have time to do everything we have planned for today's episode. So I'll have to wrap it up there. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sure you can follow Tanille on socials and ask her these questions directly yourself. So Tanille, I'll give you the chance if you'd like to just tell people where they can keep up with you and how to support you if they liked what they heard today.
Yeah, totally. So I'm on almost every social media platform that's reasonable. I am not on X, just to put that out there. I'm on Mastodon. If anyone knows what Mastodon is or you want to know, check it out. So yeah, Google me, any social media platform that suits your abilities, your needs, the way you communicate, find me on it. Shoot me an email, shoot me a message on Facebook. I do try to be as responsive as possible. Instagram's another good one. You can message me on there. And I try to get back to people in a fairly timely way, because I want to personally answer your questions. I want to be the person that you're hearing from. And I'd be more than happy to do that. And then obviously, if you ever get a chance to maybe hit the donate button, we're fundraising like crazy right now because we want to stay on that ballot and the price tag is hefty. So please, anything you can, $5, $20, the max at $17.50 if you're really feeling it. Really great, really appreciate it. And you can find that on my website at tanille.ca.
Great. Thank you so much, Tanille. And Tanille will be back in about half an hour after we chat with our next guest. So thank you, Tanille. I'm going to pull you off screen now. So that was Tanille Johnston. But now it's time to turn to our other leadership hopeful today. As I already mentioned, Tony is a farmer who is seeking to merge the NDP and the Greens to mitigate vote splitting, which we just talked about a lot. So I think we're going to continue having a really good conversation about that. Tony also, like many Canadians, would like to see electoral reform in our country. On top of that, he's running on 4 R's: representation, regeneration, redesign, and redistribution. He's also talking about 4 Ds, but I'm going to let him tell you about those. Tony says that his approach prioritizes cooperation over division, renewable energy over resource depletion, and fairness over unchecked inequality. So with that, Tony, welcome to Bubble Pop.
Well, thank you, Rachel. And I should correct, I made the mistake of doing a wordplay when I first announced it, talking about the Green Democratic Progressives and talking about a merger.
Yeah.
So we'd have GDP as the initial, because the economists love GDP, which ignores the main half of the economy, which is the unwaged part, which is Mother Nature and our communities and families. So that was sort of a joke. We don't have time to go through the process of trying to merge parties. But what we do need to do is figure out how people who are concerned about the environment and concerned about people in their community work together so we don't split the vote. And that's my first R, representation, because the first past the post system has been in place since Confederation, when only rich men had the vote. And after the First World War, when women and ordinary working people got the vote, they didn't change the system. So it has continued to keep the 99% from being fairly and adequately represented in Parliament. And until we change that, we're never going to get onto my regeneration, redistribution, and redesign R's, or all the good things that Tanille was talking about. So we've got to face up to that. And the whole thing about strategic voting is the political parties that believe that the environment and people are important need to behave strategically by talking way before an election to say, well, what can we agree on? I mean, we can disagree about stuff, and that's fine. Any relationship, you're likely to disagree on some things. But what do we agree on? And do we agree that we got to close tax loopholes? Do we agree that a progressive wealth tax would make sense? Do we, what do we agree on? What do we agree on about the environment? What do we agree on about how we really build a nation by investing in our communities across Canada, and then put together a program and then only run one candidate for that program in each riding. So people know what the strategic vote is in their riding if they're concerned about the environment and concerned about building a Canada that works for people. Don't leave strategic voting up for them to try and figure out which of these people is under the right, where's the P under the shell? No, let's figure that out and make sure it's really clear to them. That's the strategic thing that the parties and the leaders of the parties need to do. So that's my first star. But I'll let you go back to you because
No, that's fine. Yeah, if you'd like to keep explaining your R's, because I was going to ask you about what sets you apart from the other leadership candidates, and it sounds like that's part of it.
Well, it's certainly part of it. I mean, I think one of the things that sets me apart is I'm a few years older than most of the candidates. So you put Tanille and me together, we'd make a great team. But I bring 45 years of experience to this process. I've run 5 times federally, twice provincially. I was a school board trustee for 3 terms, and I served as the executive assistant to the Minister of Agriculture. And I got involved in politics, not because I wanted to be a politician, because I like being a farmer, but I got involved in politics during the high interest rate and energy crisis of the 1970s. Energy prices quadrupled, and then they doubled again during that decade of the 70s. And our brilliant leaders at the time in the Conservative and Liberal parties and their advisors decided that the way you fight inflation caused by energy price escalation, which of course creates a huge inflationary wave across the economy, because so everything depends to some extent on energy, they fought it with high interest rates, which just made the waves higher. Because for homeowners and farmers and small businesses, now here was one more increased expense to their lives and operation. So what they really did, and what really made it clear to me, is they created an excuse for creating a system that transferred wealth from farmers and small businesses and homeowners to the 1%, to the rich who already were the bankers and had big deposits in the banks. And it just was a crooked scheme. And it still is the way we've got our economy structured and our tax system structured. But Ed Broadbent was the person who made sense to me. So I got involved in politics because I wanted to change the way we treated the planet and how we treated each other. So I bring that long-standing conviction from well over 50 years, because I felt that way before, but I really got politicized for the 1980 federal election. Representation is first, because until we deal with that first past the post system and actually get a proportional system in place, we have to figure out how to work together when those are the rules we're playing with. But then regeneration, because I'll get into the deep part. Our leadership has been delusional for the last 45 years. We knew, I took an environmental studies degree at Waterloo while I was farming, and we knew in the 70s, we'd seen photographs of the planet taken from the Apollo missions, right? We knew it's this little space in space with a little atmosphere and a living film of people, plants, animals on the surface. And you can't keep expanding energy and resource consumption in that. And you can't keep dumping into that atmosphere without serious consequences. But for the last 45 years, we've had a capitalist, corporate, consumerist ideology that tells us that we got to keep growing, and we got to keep growing this, what really is a cancer on the planet now in terms of how our economy works. And as a farmer, I see the shredding of the life support system that we have. When I was married 50 years ago in our orchard, it was just with the bees in the full blooms. And this year, 50 years on our anniversary date, I went out into our orchard and it was silent. And I saw an insect there, an insect there, an insect there. And, insects are a very important part of the food web of life. And, we are moving into a place where if we don't stop doing the damage and start healing the damage, we are not creating a space that's going to be good for my kids and grandkids. So that's why regeneration is second. We've really got to do this. And I think we can do it, because what gives me hope is what I hear from people across the country in communities, nature clubs, in pollution cleanup groups, all sorts of different things, people naturalizing their yards, and that people want to do something, but they need support and leadership to do that. And that would be nation building, because you could provide that support across the country. People figuring out how to change the transportation so that they create maybe a municipal Uber. So regeneration, we got to get on it. But then the redistribution part, our economy has been structured by people who believe that you want to accumulate capital for it to work well. Well, they've done a really good job. Man, when I got involved in the 80s, we were talking about millionaires. Now we're talking about multi-billionaires. And there's a big difference between a million and a billion, Rachel. Because if I told you you had 1 million seconds to live, you'd have 11 days. But if I told you had 1 billion seconds to live, you'd have 31 years. So it's just, when you write it, it's an M or a B or 3 zeros. But, when it's 31 years to 11 days, that gives you a sense of how out of proportion, really obscenely out of proportion things have gotten. So we need a wealth tax. We need a closing loopholes, and we need to recognize that the rich need to pay for the services they get, because they'll use airports, seaports, the road system, the legal system, all that, a lot more than a homeless person on the streets in Ottawa, which unfortunately I got to see when I was at the Canadian Labour Congress Forum. And so finally, the fourth R is redesign, because we need to work with people across Canada on how we redesign our communities and our activities so that we meet our basic needs while using a lot less energy and a lot fewer resources, and figure out how to take what we have and share it in a way that benefits and builds our communities in a truly regenerative and long-term healthy, sustainable manner. So that's where my 4 R's come from. And these are the delusional thinking, the denialist behavior that they are engaged in, which is saying, well, we can just keep on this track, stability and growth. No, I do not want to stabilize a system that has created this kind of inequity in society in terms of wealth. And the people who produce the wealth aren't getting to share in it. And that also is taking us down the track, growing us into ecological collapse. So, we can't keep accepting their denial of reality. And then we certainly got to stop the destructive choices. I mean, when I see Carney talking nation building about liquefied natural gas, pipelines, large non-modular nuclear reactors, and then more mining and more mineral extraction. And then his second tier is carbon capture by the people who brought you carbon release. What a bunch of bullshit. As a farmer, we can take carbon dioxide out of the air through photosynthesis and growing plants. If we invest in helping farmers do stuff they already know how to do and expand the carbon capturing things, there are benefits to farmers in terms of soil quality and better crop growth and production. There's benefits in terms of water retention because land's more porous when it has higher carbon or higher organic matter in it, which reduces the risk of flooding downstream. And from the farmer's perspective, if you get a big rain, it also means you hold on to it. So if you then followed by a drought, there are win-win solutions out there, but our current leadership are not interested in them because they don't make money for the corporate elite. And so that's something we've got to address and understand. I'll slow down there for a minute.
No, that was fantastic. I think the whole point of these interviews is to give people an intro into who you and Tanille are. So, feel free to go on as long as you want.
Well, I've been a holistic management certified educator for about the last 15 years, but we took our first holistic management course back in the mid-90s, and it was transformational for our farm, which is why I became an educator some years later. But the idea of holistic management was that, there are complex things and there are complicated things. My tractor's complicated, the airplane's complicated, but they have linear relationships in a lot of the ways they connect. A ranch, a farm, a family, a country, those are complex. There's so many different things going on in them. So you need management systems that let you manage complex systems and adapt so that you keep going toward a goal rather than assuming, well, we made the plan and now we just stick to it. So when I first was thinking about running, I asked the people on my email contact list whether they thought it was a good idea, whether they thought these concerns were worth putting at a national leadership process, and got pretty good response on it. But I also asked them, what would you want for the quality of life in Canada? What would you hope for the future vision? And what are some of the things you think we need to do to make that happen? And I created what is a holistic goal for Canada. And I'd like to read it to you, because one of the real values of a holistic goal is by stating quality of life and vision, it gives you something to aim for. And I think that the quality of life goals here in this holistic goal for Canada would be something that could unify people, because I believe we have to reach out well beyond the membership of the NDP or the membership of the NDP and the Green Party. We need to build a green progressive coalition of people who are concerned about the planet, and they are concerned about their community and their family, and want to figure out how we make something that works for both of those. And so I think we have to reach out to the over 50% of people who've given up on voting. And I agree with Tanille. We have to have people understand, and I don't know if you can see my cake chart in the back here, but it's a cake chart designed by a woman named Hazel Henderson, who said, I'm tired of pie charts. I'm an economist, but I'm tired of pie charts. I want a cake chart. And her cake chart has nature at the bottom, the family and community is the next layer, the public sector, and then the private sector. And she said the really important thing to remember about a layer cake is every layer depends on all the layers below it. And, part of the problem from our economist point of view is these two layers don't show up in GDP because they're the unmonetized stuff. So if we only use GDP as a measure of how well we're doing and what we should be doing, we are neglecting the workers who are the unwaged workers in the family and community layer, which are somebody coaching the ball team or the hockey team, mom looking after the kids at home, somebody with a partner who has a disability and they're having to do care for. That whole layer is critical work for a society to succeed. And we need to make sure that when we talk about workers, the 99% understand that they're all part of what we're talking about with workers. And then when you get to that next layers, there's waged workers that are unionized and there are waged workers that are not. And we need to be sure that people understand they're people we're talking about, both in the public sector and the private sector. But it's the top three layers of that cake that are the people that I think we need to be working with and working for to create a green progressive movement. And so we need to reach out to the people who've stopped voting, but we also need to reach out to the disillusioned liberals and the concerned conservatives who are starting to understand that the people who actually run their party and make the decisions are not them. They are the 1% in Canada, and they've been doing it since Confederation and before Confederation. That's why we have to solve the issue of first past the post. But it's also, if we're going to get a country that works for Canadians, the 99% have to be represented fairly around the table. And, our electoral system is rigged. So let me read you the holistic goal for Canada, and then that. So quality of life. As a country, we meet the basic needs for water, food, shelter, clothing, healthcare, and education for every Canadian resident. Everyone has access to fresh air, clean water, and healthy green space. Everyone has time and energy for themselves, their families, their friends, their occupation. Everyone has an opportunity to contribute and be involved in their community. So that's the quality of life people have. And this is a goal. I know we're not there now, and we'll never get there unless we get control of the decisions that governments make to help us get there. But that's the quality of life. The vision is Canada is a caring, compassionate country, both to its residents at home and the broader world community. We make decisions carefully, considering their impact on the planet, the people, and the economy. The earth is healing, communities are thriving, and conflict at home and abroad is decreasing. How many people don't think that would be a nice idea? That's the vision that hopefully people can come together behind and then say, okay, how do we get there? And then in the holistic goal, there's 3 parts. And the third part is, what are the systems and behaviors you have to do and work on to make this real? And that is, we develop mechanisms for participatory democracy and proportional representation so that all voices can contribute to discussions and decisions from the local to the national level. We support locally designed projects to enhance local well-being and resilience. We prioritize stable, regenerative food production with adequate local processing and distribution to meet domestic needs before focusing on exports. We work with provinces, municipalities, housing cooperatives, and housing nonprofits to build affordable and inclusive ecological housing. We work with provinces and municipalities to address and discourage real estate speculation and profiteering. We ensure that one full-time job can cover the basic cost of living for a family using a living wage supported by a fair tax system and guaranteed annual income. We support nonviolent communication and conflict resolution from the individual to the national and international level. And once you have your holistic goal, then every time you're making a decision, passing a law, developing a program, exploring a policy, you test it against that decision, that goal, and say, is this going to take us toward it? And it worked wonders in terms of our farm and family when we did that. And it's been used at municipal levels, in community organizations, as well as on farms and ranches. And so, that's what I would say is, if this is something that sounds good, it's just pie in the sky and no friggin' government ever delivers what it says it's going to do. Well, people can feel that way because that's the way the damn system's working, and will continue to work as long as we leave the power in the hands of the 1%. But we can change that if we create a green progressive movement for all the people who do want something that will work for their families and work for their community and work for the planet. And that to me is why I'm in this race, because after the 2025 elections in Ontario and federally, I felt I could either lie down in despair or get on with stuff. But how much time do we have left in this part of the thing, Rachel?
Well, I was going to probably ask you a quick final question while I give the audience a chance to ask some stuff and put it in the chat. So the one thing that I guess I'll go ahead with that if that's all right with you, time-wise.
Being a typical politician, I may or may not answer it because there's something I need to say.
Okay, well, that's exciting. So I just quickly wanted to ask you about, and maybe this is me being the "it's never going to happen" person you were referring to, but that's sometimes the foil that the journalist plays, right? And I did want to ask you. We saw Justin Trudeau. He promised electoral reform and broke his promise on that regard. And I think that was in large part also because of the fact that he was so wedded to the idea of a ranked ballot rather than actually listening to what experts and what the outcome of the study was when they studied the question. But that was the closest that we've gotten on a federal level to achieving electoral reform. And I wanted to ask you both sort of how you would suggest we approach this differently to actually achieve it, and also how you would go about convincing people to join this sort of green progressive movement if they feel a lot of loyalty to the sort of more tribal party politics that exists now?
Well, as I say, I think if we build a strong enough green progressive movement that doesn't run competing candidates in ridings, we could get there in the next election. And with the way things are going in terms of both the environment, I see ecological collapse from a farmer's viewpoint on the ground level, and I see social collapse at the news feed level. And, we are not headed to good places. And if people are concerned about that, then we need to give them a clear option. And, if I'm the prime minister after the next election, the first thing I will be doing is bringing in a citizens' assembly, take it out of the hands of the politicians, a citizens' assembly on electoral reform that would provide, we would use in the next 2 election cycles so people actually got to experience how it would work. The other thing I would bring in next would be a citizens' assembly on the principles of a fair tax system, so we can really look at how we redesign our system. But I also want to talk about electoral systems, because the NDP leadership have created, as Tanille alluded to, a very difficult set of rules and very short timeline for somebody who didn't already have a national social media following to get out there and get their views known. And I want to make an announcement right now. I talked to Tanille last night to see how things were going, and it's pretty tight for them because we have to get another 33,000 of donations, because the party's taking 25% of each donation to get the 25,000 that we need by November 30th. Well, I believe in cooperation and collaboration and the need to deal with screwed up electoral systems. And the NDP system for this election was not designed to make it easy for somebody like Tanille or me to get well known in a time frame where we could raise the money. And they're asking for 3/4 of the money in a year when New Democrats already donated federally for a federal election. I mean, that they know how this system works. They could have split it over 2 years, but they've got 1/4 in 2026, 3/4 now. So money is really hard for people, campaigns like mine and Tanille's, to raise. So I want to tell your listeners, do not donate to the Tony McQuail campaign now. Donate to the Tanille Johnston campaign. We are going to stop fundraising. We have a wonderful crew of people who've come to this. This is not denying or trying to reduce what we've done and what we've accomplished so far, but I don't want both of us to try and raise money and in effect squeeze both of us out of the race. So in the interest of cooperation and collaboration and dealing with awkward electoral systems, we're going to walk our talk, and we're going to say we're not fundraising until Tanille has the 25,000 she needs to be in the race and pay it by November 30th. And we trust that her campaign will let us know when they do, and then we can start fundraising again. But if one of us has to go, it's me. And but we will be in Montreal, and we will be campaigning as hard as we can. And if I have to drop out, I may have to keep going as an unofficial candidate if our team wants to keep pushing the ideas and things that we feel we needed to bring and wanted to bring to this campaign. And we will be sending out an email later today to all the NDP membership with a button that they can go to and donate to Tanille's campaign, saying, this is the reality. The Breach said it back in May, and if you know the Breach media system, look up what they said about a rigged NDP leadership race and how it was going to be designed to not make it easy for not star candidates. I'm not a star candidate. I'm just a farmer from Ontario with no social media following until now because of all the young people who've come to the campaign. Wonderful, wonderful folks working on the campaign. But that's, as a holistic management farmer, I practice planned adaptive grazing so that if the grass isn't growing, I have to change the plan. And so right now I'm trying to be a holistic management politician practicing adaptive political campaigning. And so, friends, if you liked what Tanille had to say and you liked what I had to say, send donations to Tanille until she gets to the point where she makes her payment back to the party on November 30th. And And then if you've got anything left, our campaign would love to see it.
Wow, that is, I have to pull Tanille up to get her reaction, because that is an incredibly generous and huge move in this leadership race. So Tanille, I mean, how did you feel hearing that?
I mean, it's pretty overwhelming. Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming. I mean, it's not, now I need to not cry, Tony. When human beings can be human beings and live values that we talk about all the time, it's pretty inspirational. Like, for Tony to recognize that and to not just say it, but actually like allow it to take a form of action is pretty inspirational. And I mean, I can't really say thank you enough. And I just really hope people can witness that. Yeah, it's big. It's really, 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 really big.
Well, Tanille, I would love to see any of our leadership candidates. I think anyone would do a better job as prime minister than what we've got in place now in terms of the issues that I think are critical for our survival. But the other thing I want to say is that some of those other leadership candidates helped us out when we were short of signatures for the nomination papers. And I want to say that's what a collegial, cooperative political movement can do for each other. We've got to pick each other up, and we've got to pick each other up as a community, as Canada, and we've got to stop creating, and that's what First Past the Post does, is create a political system where you can get advantage. 2 or 3% change going from 38% to 40% can now give you 100% control of the parliament, because that just leads to the kind of pit bull politics that is so corrosive and so destructive to society. And we got to let go of that. We got to get rid of it. But until the rules are changed, we got to figure out how to adapt and make the system work for the 99%. And, I would be delighted to see you there. I'd be delighted for you to raise $25,000 tomorrow and say, go back to helping Tony get on the podium. But if it doesn't happen, I'm delighted that as long as you're still there and we haven't pulled money so much that we neither one make it. So I'm with you, friend.
I appreciate that.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for doing this in a space where we can all kind of share in this really powerful moment. That was just incredible to watch. It's not the kind of moment you see in politics very often. So, Tony, out of curiosity, like what made you want to do this, and particularly with respect to Tanille specifically, to help her candidacy in this way?
Well, my sense is that Avi Lewis is probably not going to have a big fundraising problem. I hope Heather doesn't have one, but she's already been an MP. She's got connections across. Rob, I assume, has pretty good union connections. I didn't call him to check on that, but I assume he's got some people who can donate close to the upper limit that you're allowed to donate. But Tanille and I are coming from a place of relatively national ignorance about who we are and what we offer. And we've had to build a campaign that then became a national campaign in a very, very short period of time with 3 very high financial hurdles. I mean, if the party had just taken the inflation rate to what the last leadership was, this wouldn't be a problem for me or Tanille, because it would have been at $38,000 for the whole campaign, not $100,000, but $133,000 of donation, because the party's taking 25% of each donation. So my sense was that, and the reality was, we got the nomination signatures, and I got wonderful support from people in Huron-Bruce who've already worked with me for the last 45 years and know me. In fact, we're going to have to send some money back because one of our seniors has donated twice and they've overdone the limit, right? And it just came in yesterday. So we got to figure out how to send money back to them. But I didn't have that kind of national exposure or experience for people who've known me and worked with me. So we didn't make the first 25,000. It's a place where I had to draw on I still have a little business in terms of my consulting and our solar panel and a little bit of pay that my daughter pays me for working on the farm. I had to draw out of that account and out of our personal account to send enough money to our campaign to pay the first $25,000. And so at some point we'll need to raise the money. I think it's my chief financial officer tells me it has to be a loan. I can't just give it. But I would like to get it back, actually. So hopefully after Tanille's good, and if I keep going, it's all good, we'll eventually raise enough money over the $133,000 to pay me back. But if I don't make it through this next hurdle, then our campaign will be needing to figure out how to pay me back and pay a bunch of expenses, because I've just been absorbing them at this point. But we are going to be in Montreal, and I will be trying to use my 2 years of high school French from over 50 years ago to do a little something en français. But we're going to ride share it there. So we're going to have a little van that somebody has, and we're all going to put in some gas money, and we're going to get there, because ride sharing is one of the best ways to increase the passenger kilometers per liter and to reduce the amount of vehicle traffic on the road. So we're going to not only walk our talk, but drive our talk as well.
So I might skip ahead and kind of do the little lightning round now, if that's okay with you guys. But Tony, before I do, can you tell people where they can follow your campaign and keep up with you and support you? And I guess also Tanille.
Yeah. Well, there's at Tony McQuail, greenprogressive.ca. That's our website. It was started by a high school student who liked what I was saying and came on board to start it. And it's now got some other folks helping because his life got busy. I'm apparently on a number of social media platforms that, being an old farmer, I don't know much about, but we've got a wonderful team putting on Blue Sky, Mastodon, Instagram. I think there's some on X, possibly on Twitter. And if you want to get sort of connected to our Instagram stuff, if you go to our website and go to my campaign launch, that's an Instagram one. Yeah, and I know very little about running a website, but I think maybe we'll try and put an X on the donate section button on ours for a while and say go to Tanille's until we hear that they've got the money they need.
Wow.
Anyway.
That's great. Okay, so one of the lightning things I just thought of that I really want to do is, can I hear each of you say a little sentence in French about, how you feel about next week's debate? Just one little sentence. Just go for it. Who wants to go first?
Je m'appelle Tony. J'ai plus d'anxiété de la conversation en français en Montréal.
Bonne chance, monsieur. Et toi,
Tanille. What would I say? A word that describes, bien, I guess, like good. Ish.
Yeah. Tu te sens bien pour on avance le débat? Oh my God, this is funny. I'm looking forward to seeing how the debate goes. I think it'll be a fun watch for the French components. But I take it you guys are practicing your French, though. You're
un peu.
Yeah.
Info for sure. Yeah, my brain is like so challenged by it because my adult life has been spent trying to learn Licola, which the phonetic is like incredibly different. So I went to start trying to read French, and I was like, my brain is like, what are you trying to make me do? So it's just, I was like, wow, this is gonna be something else.
Tanille, that brings up something that I think is really important to say. As long as we let language or race or sexuality or sexual orientation divide us as a people, we will always be under the thumb of the 1%. I will never be fluent in French, but I also won't be fluent in the more than 70 indigenous languages that are part of the nation. I don't speak Ukrainian. We have to accept that unless you plan to be a career politician and then go polish your French, or grew up, going to schools where you were groomed to be one of the elite in this country, you may not know French or you may not know English. But does that mean that you can't? I found when we had Katimavik billets that I got along a lot better with the kids from working class Quebec on the farm than I did with white privileged kids from Rosemont. And so we need to figure out how to not let race, language divide us in ways that disempower us as the 99% who make this country go round, who create the wealth of it, and have a real big vested interest in having a ecology in Canada that lasts and that we can all live in.
Yeah, it's a very heartwarming message. I did also want to ask each of you to maybe in like ideally a sentence or less, but if you need to do a little more, that's okay too. I really would love to hear one thing that you've heard from another leadership hopeful, not leader, leadership hopeful in this campaign that you thought was really great, and one thing that you found concerning or really disagreed with from another candidate in this campaign. So whoever wants to go first.
I think Rob Ashton's comment that you need leaders who actually, when they put on working boots, they fit and have been broken in by working in them for a number of days and years, rather than people who put on work boots for the photo op. Thank you, Pierre.
So that was your good one.
Yeah, a good one.
Yeah.
Man, there's a lot that we agree on. There's a lot that we agree on. So one thing that's different on my campaign, but something that I don't disagree with on another one that I would still support is like Avi's approach to electrifying buses. I think it's great. I think it's a plan that does use Canadian steel. I think putting electrified buses all over the country is a really great idea. My preference is rail for lots of reasons, but not something that I don't disagree with. I think we need variety in our approach to transportation that's accessible and can help all communities. So, yeah.
Nice. All right, now be mean. What's your
oh god.
I find it very endearing that you both immediately had the positives, and but you also don't have to name the candidate if you don't want to.
I'll say one thing that is kind of a blanket statement that has maybe come up in a number of ways throughout this leadership race is there is this folks are trying to make a direct comparison to Mamdani, and I have a sore spot for when minority successes are leveraged by privileged people. And in this leadership race, there is a lot of privilege that exists. And seeing the news articles and stuff come out and just conversations that are happening and that minority success being leveraged for the potential success of another person that is arguably white, is challenging for me. Like it hits me differently when I see that and when I witness that. And I have not really inserted myself much in those conversations. I wouldn't say I avoid it, but I'm conscious of that. Each individual minority's success should be celebrated for what it is and honored for what it is, and not leveraged for someone else's, opportunities.
That's actually, I think, a really important reminder and kind of call-in moment for all of us to recognize that Zoran Mamdani, I mean, everyone in the progressive world is just aching to be compared to him. And I've certainly thrown it out there at folks too. But I think it's really important not to diminish the aspect that this was the victory of also a racialized person. And that's something that we need to remember and not diminish. So thank you for that, Tanille. That's really poignant. Tony, how about you? You gotta.
Well, yeah, I think if there's a concern that I have is it's really easy to talk about being green and the environment, but I'm not hearing a clear call to get off the capitalist, corporate, consumerist, growth-oriented train crash that we're on. And so I'm not hearing people, and that's why I wanted to be in this race, is to talk about degrowth, to talk about the need to severely reduce or significantly reduce our energy and resource use, while figuring out how we do that while maintaining and improving the lives of people. As a small farmer for the last 50 plus years, we've had to live a frugal life. So materially, it's been a pretty frugal life, but it's also been an incredibly rich and wonderful life in terms of friendships and community and family. And as a farmer, I'm so blessed to be able to be out working in nature. 95% of the time. Sleety days, moving the cattle are not always a joy. But we have to figure out how we can get off the hamster wheel that capitalist, corporate, consumerist society has most people on. And that by limiting their access to housing, to food, to making that always a desperate struggle, means that we're destroying the planet on which we need to live, so that the rich can get richer. Because that was the other thing that, my father was an accountant, and he told me two things. He said, money's like manure. It does the most good when you spread it around. But the other thing he said, and he works with some pretty rich folk as an accountant, was that one of the problems with money is you can always want more. And so our billionaires still think they need more. I'm sorry, they don't. We need to figure out how to change the economy so it's distributive, and so that the wealth that has been accumulated since before Confederation, and certainly since before working people got the vote, starts to get spread back out around the community, so it really does more good for Canadians across the country. So, I wanted to hear somebody talking about degrowth, and I still do hear myself talking about degrowth, and I kind of hear Tanille talking about some of that too, but I don't feel that maybe growth has been promoted as such a good thing for so long in terms of our economic discourse, that if you don't talk about growth, nobody will vote for you. Well, at this point, if you don't start talking about degrowth, you're talking about, well, let's just keep feeding the cancer cells. Here, have some more sugar. No, I'm sorry, folks. We need to talk about degrowth.
Yeah.
And how to do it fairly and effectively and quickly.
Great. Well, guys, I know I've already kept you a little bit over the time that we had planned for today. So I'll just give you one last opportunity, in that I'd love to have each of you say in one sentence what you hope the listeners retain from today and from hearing from you today. What is one thing that you really hope sticks with them? Go for it. Whoever wants to go first.
Send your donations to Tanille's campaign until it's got the money it needs, and then send it to us.
Fantastic. Tanille?
I hope that you hear that we need the right leader for the here and now, and that job of prime minister isn't necessarily it. We need someone that can bring us together and move into the next election and really slay, and get back that leverage in the House of Commons. And I would be honored to do that work for the party.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for your time today. This was an incredible conversation. Apologies to the folks in the chat that I wasn't able to take more questions. These guys just had so much interesting stuff to say, and I couldn't stop listening and just asking my own questions. So thank you for indulging me, chat. But just remember that both of them are very accessible. So if you want to reach out, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions directly. And good luck to you both on Thursday. Hopefully I can try to swing by the debate. We'll have to see, because I'm in Montreal. But either way, best of luck to both of you, and thank you again for your time today.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Rachel.
Bye-bye, Rachel.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Bubble Pop. I'm Rachel Gilmore, your least favorite person's least favorite journalist. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing on YouTube, Patreon, Substack, or wherever you like to listen. You can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, and Blue Sky. I'd like to give a special thank you to Hans Vivian Wenzel for making the incredibly groovy music for Bubble Pop. You can find more of his stuff on Spotify under the artist name Hans. That's a lowercase h with an exclamation mark. Thank you again for spending this time with me. This is my dream job. I know I say that every week, but that's because it's true every week, and I couldn't do it for 1 second without your support. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.